Hello, and welcome to Old Man's horrible review of Dauntless. Let me start with some disclaimers. Number one, it's called a horrible review because I am a house dad with a kid and a dog, and you might hear them screaming or barking in the background, and I'm not going to edit that out because I don't do this professionally. So, on top of that, I have only actually played about 6 to 10 hours of the game, so it's really more like a brief look at the game and its concepts, just enough to understand that and be able to convey them to you. More of a why should I try this sort of thing. Second disclaimer, I do not believe in rating systems for video games because video games are the most subjective form of art out there. So I will be giving you pros and cons from my point of view to help you better understand that if your playstyle fits this game, whether or not you should be playing it. But before I give those, I'm going to go over a brief overview of the game itself. So let's jump right into it. Dauntless is a Monster Hunter game. You can't have Dauntless without saying Monster Hunter. It's very obvious that the developers looked at Monster Hunter and said, man, I'd really wish this was in the game, or this wasn't in the game, or this was in the game. And then they kind of made their own version, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I'm not knocking them for it. The story is even simpler, at least where I am. Basically, you're just a slayer. You are in a fantasy world where everything is on these floating islands. There's these giant monsters called behemoths. You take the role of a slayer, and you cull them so that they don't encroach on humanity, also sharing these islands. Much like Monster Hunter, you go on a quest to find and slay a monster, thus culling that monster and taking the parts of the monster back with you to then forge weapons and armor out of the monster that help you fight other monsters. Thus, you rinse and repeat over and over again, fighting bigger and bigger and badder monsters to get bigger and bigger and badder equipment. You know, the essence of a looter. If Monster Hunter World had an arcade mode, I would call it Dauntless. Basically what they did is, with Monster Hunter World, you have to very methodically move through these worlds, find investigations, figure out about the monsters you're facing. This game kind of does all that for you. It's much more streamlined and geared towards the combat aspect, and it's also a lot faster to get in and out of hunts, and it's a lot easier to do multiplayer in this game. They also cut out a lot of complicated weapon and armor trees. Instead, each monster has one weapon and one set of armor. A torso, hands and arms, legs and feet, and head. And then those individual items can be upgraded via, of course, acquiring new stuff, but there's not any weird trees that branch off or anything like that in Monster Hunter, so it's very straightforward. You get a fire weapon from the fire guy, and then you just keep upgrading that fire weapon to deal with, ice characters and whatnot. All of the research is done for you too, so when you go to set yourself into a hunt, the hunt is very simple and straightforward. They even show you in the load-up screen what armor is going to be best to protect you and what type of weapon is going to be best to use on the creature that you're going after. There's also not a lot of running around and searching for and following creature trails and whatnot. Basically what happens when you go into a hunt is it procedurally generates an island. That island has all sorts of gathering materials for alchemy, such as potions and buff potions and whatnot, that you can gather while making your way to the monster. And then somewhere on the island is the monster. And once you find the monster, you fight the monster, you kill the monster, you come out of the mission. What I do like about the multiplayer streamlining, it's very easy to just right off the bat hit you want to matchmake. It'll matchmake the people around you, and then it'll put you into the quest with them. And if you're not wearing a mic, it's not a big deal, because once you find the creature, you have this option to hit a flare, and then everybody can see where you are, and they know that you used the flare because you saw the creature, so they'll come and fight the creature with you. Which is great, because that means you can all spread out and collect more stuff together. Once you find the creature, it's all about the fighting. There's not a lot of booby traps or things to lay out ahead of time. It's go in and use your weapon in the best way possible. Much like Monster Hunter World, there's a series of weapons that you can use that change your playstyle as well as the moves that you can dish out. But again, with Monster Hunter World, sometimes you can feel like each weapon you choose is a complete, like almost remaps the controller. With this one, there's always 2 attacks. Those 2 attacks are used in different ways regarding the weapon that you're using, but it's the same 2 attacks that you can do. Fighting the monster itself is more about twitch reflexes. It's about circling them, quick evasions, and well-placed attacks. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, it's much more action forward. You're looking at monster hunts that take 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, whereas in Monster Hunter World, there were insane missions. Like even in the beginning, you would go on a hunt and it would take you somewhere around 30 minutes. With this one, it's much more get in, get out, get it done, and then go on to the next one. So, that brings me to pros and cons of the game. Pros of the game, it's gorgeous. For a free-to-play game with absolutely no monetary cost, you just download it. It's only 8 gigs. It has an elegant, like, cartoony, cel-shaded design, almost like a Paladins of Realm. But it looks really good. Through playing, I didn't have a lot of server issues. I was only kicked once through 3 or 4 hours, which for a free-to-play game is pretty good, in my opinion. If you ever wanted to play Monster Hunter World, but all the extra stuff around the fighting the monsters, to get to the fighting the monsters was either intimidating or too much for you, this is the game for you, because it's just about the fight with the big monsters. I'm not saying it doesn't take intelligence, it does. There's a lot of thought into the action and the fighting and how you approach the creature, but it's much more quicker, it's right to the point, whereas other games are not. Finally, my cons. My cons of this game are the things that some people find irritating about Monster Hunter World. I really enjoy. I do like hunting a monster through the woods and figuring out stuff about it. This game doesn't have that, and to me, that made the creatures feel a little bit less important and awe-inspiring when I did face them. When it's a menu and I just pick this frost behemoth to go fight, yeah, it looks cool, and it is scary, but at the same time, learning about it, following it through the wilderness, figuring out what hurts it and what doesn't, gives it this larger-than-life feeling that you're not going to get here. But again, for a free-to-play game, this is very impressive, and I highly recommend you download it and at least try it. What do you have to lose? It's free. Okay, and this has been a horrible old man gaming review of a game. Like I said, it's not good, it's not even great, it's not even really subpar. It's horrible, but hopefully I gave you an idea of what this game is and what it brings to the table and whether or not you should sink some hours into it.